Let's make potato corn chowder. Here we go with our clean station, and I'm going to go ahead and start on my knife cuts. So I have to do a small diced onion, so I'm peeling the onion. You'll notice throughout this I'll be wiping my knife and cleaning as well, okay? So I want to make sure that I'm nice and safe when I'm doing my chopped onion, and you remember how to do the chopped onion from your knife cuts activity. So I just want to get enough for the recipe here, so I need probably no more than half of an onion. So you see that I'm chopping it here, and I'm using that claw. I'm going to try and be careful as possible when I'm chopping this onion. So when you do it for your midterm, I'm going to be watching you chop everything. So it's a really good idea to practice as much as possible. Now that I have my onion finished, I have a clear table, and now I'm starting on my celery. So I'm small dicing my celery. I trimmed it. Everything is washed already, and I'm just gonna do so I zoomed in so you can kind of see a little bit easier. I have that claw again on my hand, and I'm just doing a small dice here for the celery. Okay, I really don't like big chunks of celery, especially in soup. So for me, the small dice is best. Okay, so I want to put that aside. Notice that every time I chop something, I put it in a container and I put it to the side. I never have excess ingredients on my cutting board. That is unprofessional. So make sure that you are working as professional as possible. Great, now here are my potatoes. I'm using Yukon Gold potatoes. They have a great texture in the soup and also in the garnish. So I left them unpeeled, so you see that I'm peeling it here, moving off the peel to the side. Now starting with the knife cuts. Now let's cut our potatoes. So we're trying to get medium diced potatoes for two purposes. You're going to put some into the soup, and you're also going to cook some for a garnish, and the garnish is called potatoes parmentier. And so we need medium diced potatoes for both. So you see that I square off my potato, and then with the clawed finger I'm looking straight down, and I want to make sure and get my measurements as close as possible. And the thing is, I'm not using a ruler here because I'm used to doing these types of cuts for many years. You definitely want to practice doing these cuts ahead of time, because if you're measuring with the ruler on the midterm, you are not going to have enough time in that 30-minute time block. So these cuts, they need to come easy to you, like muscle memory. So you can see here that I'm just going through and cutting my medium dices, and I can see by eye that they are pretty much accurate. Okay, so I want to do that for both of the potatoes, and then I will split the potatoes into 2 mise cups to make sure I have enough for the garnish as well as the soup. And now I'm doing a medium dice on my second potato, and now you can see that I have 2 final containers of potatoes parmentier, or sorry, medium diced potatoes. One for potatoes parmentier and the other for the soup itself. Now here is my final mise en place. You can see it's very organized. I have everything in a separate container so that when I'm ready to start, I know where everything is, and it's very professional looking, and it's easy to grab everything. Great. So you'll notice here I have 3 pans. One is for the soup, one is to char the corn, and one is for the potatoes parmentier. I am starting with 3 pans so that I can multitask. So as you see, I put the corn there, and the corn is going to char while I start rendering my bacon. So the bacon is going to go into that sauce pot, and as you can see, I have a I have an electric stove. Okay, and so I don't have anything super fancy. You don't need anything fancy to do any type of cooking in general. It's just a matter of what your skills are. So let's go ahead and add our bacon in, and then we will add our medium diced potatoes, one of the containers of the medium diced potatoes, to start the potatoes parmentier. I'm putting my seasoning here so it's ready to go. I have salt and I have sugar and I have black pepper. So here goes the bacon. Okay, and I'm going to get this on a medium heat, and it needs to render for a while. And rendering, it just means to cook out that fat so that we have crispy bacon in the end. So you can see I have my medium diced potatoes in there, and they don't look like they're doing much right now, but every so often you want to give them a stir. Those are cooking on medium heat. You do not want to cook those on high heat. They are cooking in neutral oil. If you do them at high heat, you will completely burn them. So medium low heat is perfect. And just make sure to stir it often. Okay? So you see here that there is a lot of kind of foam going on in the bacon. The color has changed, and what you want is for the bacon to look a more darker color. You definitely don't want it to burn though. But all of those bacon pieces that have gotten crisp, we're going to drain it so that we can save it for our garnish. Okay, you can also put some bacon pieces back into the soup while it's cooking as well, but I like to just save it for the garnish. Great, now that we have our bacon strained, I didn't get every single piece, that's okay. We're going to utilize that fat that we've rendered out and add some butter. And I know what you're thinking, well, why do you need to add butter if you already have your bacon fat? Well, because we're trying to make what we're calling a roux, and that's what's going to thicken the soup. Okay, so we need a little bit of the butter, and it also helps to flavor the soup as well. So what is roux? Roux is fat and starch, and so we're using two types of fat today. We're using the bacon grease as well as the butter, and the starch that we're using is flour, and so we're going to use that together. And usually a roux is when you have these when you add these together to make a paste, but we're actually doing a slightly different variation of it, and we're doing that by sauteing the vegetables first and sweating those out, and then we're going to add the flour, and that process is called sanger. So I'll explain that in a second. Now I can add my onions and celery. So the main thing to remember here is that you are not getting too much color on the onions and celery. Okay, if you get too much color, they might burn, it might get a bitterness in your finished product. You don't want that. So you see that I kind of shook the potatoes there. They're starting to get sizzly. And I'm also rotating my corn every so often too. So you want to multitask as much as possible. Now that our vegetables have finished sweating, we're going to add the flour to the vegetables and the fat, and this method is called sanger. Now I know it looks like singer, but since it is French, we pronounce it sanger. And so this method here, where we've actually already cooked the vegetables some, and now we're actually cooking out the flour. You want to make sure to cook it out for a few minutes on that medium low heat, so that that raw starch flavor is gone. And we cook the flour a little bit for its toastiness too. Okay, now once you have cooked the flour out a bit, you're adding your stock. Okay, so I'm adding my stock here. And remember that the stock that you make, it should have no salt in it. It should be not seasoned at all. You want to be able to control how much seasoning you will put in. So if you add a stock that is already made and it has salt in it, it's very difficult to control that seasoning. So once we've added the stock, I'm just giving it a couple of stirs, and then I will add in my potatoes. So that's why we put the potatoes into 2 containers. So it's just easier to know which is which. Okay, so I'm adding in my medium diced potatoes here, and that way when the soup cooks and thickens, it will also cook the potatoes as well. So my corn is ready to cut, and the reason why I want to get this corn cut is, number one, I have it for the garnish. I have to have cut corn for the soup itself, and I want to make sure I use the corn cob to kind of put into the soup while it's simmering, and that way the flavor from the corn cob infuses into the soup. So I'll take some time here to cut the corn off, then I'll come back, put in the cobs into the soup. So you see here that I'm putting the cobs back into the soup so that it can get some more flavor. And don't worry, I will remove this later. Okay, I'm moving around the pan for the potatoes parmentier again. So see how the soup is cooking on low heat. You don't want to do this on high, you might scorch the bottom. So you are pretty much done with that other pan on the top. So if you wanted to remove that from your station, you could. So I'm adjusting the heat because sometimes my heat goes up and down. So just remember that in your cooking, you have to be very intuitive. And so adjusting things, adjusting heat, adjusting seasoning, all those things come with practice. Okay? So I'm just stirring the soup to check on the thickening process, okay? And then I'm also checking to see the doneness of the potato, because once the potato is cooked properly and you're just looking for it to be tender, not mushy, then I can pretty much finish the soup. And so finishing the soup is just adding the dairy products, finishing the seasoning, adding the corn, and then plating it up, okay? Great, now it's time to remove my corn cobs. Okay, my potatoes are properly cooked, and I want to move now to seasoning the soup and also adding the dairy products. Okay, So I'm tasting the potato for doneness here, and it's perfect. And so I will then add in my milk and cream. So I went ahead and combined them so that I can just add them all at once. And it's just easier. Now you can see here that I keep moving my potatoes parmentier, and this is a low, slow process. So don't be alarmed if it takes you the entire time of cooking your soup to finish your potatoes parmentier. And now I'm adding the corn back into the soup. And this is already charred corn that I've cut. And the reason why we don't add this in the beginning is because you want to have a nice texture from the corn, and if you overcook it, it gets really chewy and just not as tasty. So I add it really close to the end. Okay, so my potatoes parmentier are finished. I'm just straining it and putting it into a container and seasoning it just a bit. You want to make sure your garnishes are seasoned. So you'll notice that my soup is pretty much done. It's on low heat and just kind of sitting there warm, and I want to adjust the seasonings properly before I am ready to plate. So I will add salt if needed, I will add black pepper, and I will add sugar if needed as well. Now you might not be familiar with adding sugar to things, but remember how we talked about the balance of flavor and making sure that you can really taste all the ingredients. And by doing the balance of flavor, you'll be able to do that. So if you've never done it before, try it and see what you think and see how it changes your finished product. I think you'll be very, very happy. So I want you to know that every time I taste, I'm using a clean spoon. So I'm not dipping a dirty spoon into the soup every time I taste. And it's important to taste your soup at least 3 times. So not 3 times at the end, but 3 times in the entire process of your cooking so that you know what the progress is. Great, time to plate up. So I have a warm bowl here. I have my garnishes ready and my soup is ready to go. Let's ladle it up and put our garnishes on, and then you can see what the soup is supposed to look like. So I want to point out here that because we cooked out our flour and we kind of gave it a little color, that the soup has a little bit of a darker color to it as well. So don't be alarmed, because maybe you're used to having chowder that's perfectly white. Well, if it's white, that means that the roux was not cooked out properly, or it wasn't cooked and given the Maillard reaction that it deserves. So you want to cook it and give it that color that it deserves. So I'm just garnishing here with my charred corn, my crispy bacon, and also my potatoes parmentier. And you'll notice that I'm garnishing with the spoon, and then I'm actually not touching the garnish, making sure that I don't cross-contaminate and stay nice and clean. here is our finished potato corn chowder, ready to serve. So this is what you'll be doing on your midterm. I'm really excited to see everybody's midterm. I can't wait to see your station, your knife cuts, your organization, your mise en place, your professionalism. So practice, 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 and good luck to you.